The air was cold, thin, and unforgiving. Above the clouds, war had its own kingdom, a place where men didn't fight on foot, but with wings of metal and courage. The sky, blue, endless, merciless, was ruled by one name, the Luftwaffe. For years, the German pilots had owned these heavens. They flew their Messerschmitt Bf-109s and Focke-Wulfs Fw-190s with unmatched confidence. Their aircraft were sleek, fast, and deadly. Their pilots, arrogant, sharp, and fearless. And then, one day, they saw something new coming out of the western horizon. A plane, huge, round-nosed, almost clumsy, lumbering through the sky. They laughed. "Was es das?" one pilot said over the radio. "What is that flying milk bottle?" The Germans chuckled. To them, it looked ridiculous, fat and slow, like a farm machine trying to fly. That was their first mistake. Because what they didn't know was that this ungainly machine, the Republic P-47 Thunderbolt, would soon turn their laughter into silence. In 1941, while war raged in Europe, far across the ocean in the United States, a group of engineers at Republic Aviation worked day and night on something radical. They wanted to build a fighter unlike anything before, not a fragile, featherlight interceptor, but a bruiser of the skies. They gave it a massive Pratt Whitney R2800 engine capable of producing more than 2,000 horsepower. They wrapped the pilot in armor, built the fuselage like a tank, and armed it with 8.50 caliber machine guns, 4 in each wing. It was not elegant. It was not graceful. But it was powerful, and it was tough. When test pilots first flew it, they said it felt like riding a thunderstorm. And that's how it got its name, Thunderbolt. At first, even American pilots were unsure. The plane weighed more than most bombers. Its takeoff roll was long, and its climb rate sluggish. But then they discovered its secret. Once airborne, it could dive faster than anything in the sky. At high altitude, the Thunderbolt became a roaring beast. It wasn't built to dance. It was built to crush. Spring, 1943. The first P-47 squadrons arrived in England. The Americans were ready to join the air war over Europe. The Luftwaffe had grown used to shooting down Allied bombers with ease. German pilots believed their superiority was unshakable. But now, these strange, bulky American fighters began escorting bomber groups deep into France. The Germans spotted them and laughed again. Easy targets, they thought. On one of those early missions, Oberleutnant Karl-Heinz Müller, a Luftwaffe ace, saw a formation of P-47s above the bombers. He dove toward them, confident. His Messerschmitt screamed down at 400 miles per hour. He fired a burst, expecting to see the American plane burst into flames. But instead, the bullets bounced off the Thunderbolt's thick armor. The American didn't flinch. He turned sharply, dove, and opened fire with all 8 guns. In an instant, Müller's engine exploded. His cockpit filled with smoke. He bailed out, humiliated. The laughter began to fade. Soon, the Germans gave the P-47 a new nickname, Der Raumjäger, the space fighter. Because it could climb higher than most Luftwaffe planes, and it attacked from impossible altitudes. Its radial engine could take bullets and still keep running. Its speed in a dive exceeded 500 miles per hour, faster than any German fighter could safely follow. And when it struck like thunder. The roar of its 8 machine guns became infamous. Soldiers on the ground would hear that deep, rolling growl, bah, and know what it meant. When a P-47 dived, trees exploded, tanks burned, and trains were shredded to metal. Luftwaffe ace Adolf Göland later admitted, "We underestimated it. It was not beautiful, but it was deadly." The P-47 wasn't just a machine. It was a symbol of the men who flew it, rugged, determined, and a bit wild. One of them was Francis Gabi Gabreski, a Polish-American pilot who became one of the top-scoring American aces in Europe, most of his kills in a P-47. Gabreski once said, "She wasn't graceful, but she'd bring you home. Always." And that's what pilots loved, the Thunderbolt's ability to take punishment. You could come back with half your tail gone, oil leaking, holes in your wings, and still land safely. There were stories of P-47s limping home with cylinders missing, landing gear jammed, even engines on fire, and yet, they made it. The Thunderbolt refused to die. By late 1943, the tide of the air war had begun to turn. The P-47 squadrons now escorted bombers deeper into German territory, and they were no longer being underestimated. Over France, Belgium, and Germany, dogfights raged between Thunderbolts and Fw-190s. At first, the German planes would outclimb the P-47s. But then the Americans learned the trick, use the dive. From high above, the Thunderbolts would swoop down like hawks, fire, and climb again. The Germans tried to follow, and tore their wings apart in the dive. Soon, the Luftwaffe realized something terrifying: they could no longer control the air. Every time a squadron of Thunderbolts appeared, German formations broke apart. In radio transmissions, Luftwaffe pilots began to warn each other, Achtung, Thunderbolt oben. Watch out, Thunderbolts above. The same men who had once laughed now spoke that word with fear. In 1944, the Thunderbolt's role evolved. It became not just a fighter, but a ground attack monster. With bombs, rockets, and guns, it shredded enemy convoys, rail lines, and tanks. Entire panzer divisions were crippled by P-47 raids. Its thick armor made it ideal for low-altitude strikes. German soldiers started calling it the juggernaut. Even the sound of its dive sent men running for cover. In the months leading up to D-Day, Thunderbolts pounded French roads and bridges, ensuring the Germans couldn't move reinforcements. And on June 6, 1944, as Allied forces stormed the beaches of Normandy, the P-47 roared overhead, blasting anything that moved. One American infantryman later said, "When you saw the jugs above, you felt safe. They were angels made of steel." By 1944, the Luftwaffe was crumbling. Its aces were dead or exhausted, its fuel supplies drained. In the sky, the once mighty German fighters now faced hundreds of Thunderbolts. German pilots, once so proud, began to dread seeing those fat silhouettes on the horizon. There's a story told by a surviving German pilot, Heinz Noack, who wrote about it in his diary. He recalled seeing a squadron of P-47s above his formation. He wrote, "They look like flying beer barrels, but my God, when they dive, they come like demons." Noack and his comrades no longer laughed. They fought desperately, but the Thunderbolts kept coming, relentless, roaring, unstoppable. Each dive felt like the sky itself collapsing upon them. By the end of the war, the P-47 had destroyed over 7,000 enemy aircraft in the air and ground-destroyed tens of thousands of vehicles, trains, and tanks. It flew more than 500,000 sorties. It became the most produced American fighter of World War II, over 15,000 built. And it earned the respect, even the admiration, of its enemies. Captured German pilots admitted that they feared it more than any other Allied plane. Because no matter how high they climbed, how fast they turned, or how well they shot, the Thunderbolt kept coming back. When the guns fell silent and the world began to rebuild, the Thunderbolt's roar faded from the skies. New jets were rising, the age of propellers was ending. But among the men who had lived through those battles, the legend of the P-47 endured. In reunions and memoirs, Allied and German pilots spoke of those days, the duels above the clouds, the chase through smoke and fire. Some laughed again, but this time with respect. Even former Luftwaffe aces admitted it. "We laughed at it once," one said. "We thought it was too heavy, too slow. We were wrong." The Thunderbolt was a masterpiece of war. Today, a few P-47s still fly, in airshows, museums, and private collections. When their engines start, the sound is deep and thunderous, like a memory awakening. People look up, shielding their eyes from the sun, watching that silver-gray machine roll through the sky. To most, it's just a piece of history. But to those who know, that sound is sacred. Because it carries the echoes of courage, of young men who face death with nothing but wings and willpower. And somewhere, high above, maybe the ghosts of those old German pilots are still watching, not laughing anymore, but nodding in respect. War makes monsters out of men, and sometimes, legends out of machines. The P-47 Thunderbolt was not the prettiest, nor the fastest. But it was unstoppable. It turned ridicule into respect, and fear into freedom. The Germans laughed when they first saw it. They stopped laughing when they heard it thunder. Because in the end, the P-47 wasn't just a plane. It was the sound of justice in the sky.